Welcome, welcome, asset underdogs, to another episode of Secure the Bag Book Club. I am Brooke Brown, your host this evening. I'm really excited to have you guys come back and join me for another week of discussing a book that is meant to help you grow and protect your wealth. This month, June 2026, we are talking about the book The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. And it says timeless lessons on wealth, greed, and happiness. And boy, is it delivering. Am I right? Um, if you are joining live, please go ahead and shout yourself out in the chat. Love to shout you out live on the air. And just a little bit of housekeeping. So we talked about the book title, right? The Psychology of Money. If you are reading along at home and you want to know what we're talking about next, which chapters, if you go to assetunderdog.com/events, there you will find the reading schedule for the month. And this is not just for this month, but for every month when we are talking about a specific book. And then you also have the Spotify and YouTube playlist. So on Spotify, I linked in the description the Spotify playlist where all the audiobooks from current and past broadcasts are, so that you can read along with the audiobook version if you have Spotify Premium. And then we have the YouTube playlist. This month's book is under the playlist Money Psychology. And there are past broadcasts as well that I keep up on the channel, Asset Underdog, and we make sure that we have those companions available there. So if you're reading along on a different book that we've covered and you just like want to, tune into the past broadcast, you can do that through the playlist. The other thing is that we have the Asset Academy, which is at www.assetunderdog.com/course. It is a free course, and it is the companions to the broadcasts that we've done thus far. We've talked about art, we've talked about tax planning, we've talked about intellectual property. All those different topics that we've covered are covered in the Asset Academy modules. So make sure you check those out. Again, if you're tuning in live, go ahead and shout yourself out in the chat. Would love to shout you out live on the air. So yeah, without further ado, those announcements are over. And now it is time to dive into chapters 8 through 14. That is the section that we are covering. So, we're covering a lot of ground, so I get it. Hey, Karma, welcome in. So I get it. It's a lot to cover, but I'm going to try and skip around a little bit so that we're not just going chapter to chapter, but that we're actually like kind of having a nice, good discussion. Yeah, you just got your book today. Wonderful. Wall Street Bets is joining us live. Yay. So glad to have you here. And I'm excited that you got the book. I got the book from like a used bookstore. So, hello, find it where you can. It's also linked in the Amazon link is also in the description as well if you're looking to find it on Amazon. I'm not particular to any one platform. I don't have an affiliate link, but that's just the shout out there. So make it easier. Okay. So let's start with chapters 8 and 10. I'm going to combine the two because I felt like both of them were very much so like one and the same. So chapter 8 was, here we go. It was Man in the Car Paradox, and chapter 10 was Save Money. Pretty straightforward, right? But here's the thing, right? In chapter 8, he talks about the story of like how he saw this man in, this hot car, like this, super expensive car. And he wondered to himself, like, man, what it would be like if I was in that car, right? Not, oh, that man looks really cool, he must be someone to respect and admire, but rather, I wonder what I would look like in that car. Like, completely selfish, right? And so the chapter 8, I felt like it was called Man in the Car Paradox, but it really should have been like the title of the chapter, which is a really short chapter, should have been Nobody Cares. That's what I felt like that chapter was getting at, was like, nobody cares. Wall Street Bet says, I own Amazon stock, so I had to get it from here. It's good business. That's smart investment. There you go. Buy where you supply, right? And Kama says, I got mine on Amazon. See, everybody's getting theirs from Amazon, but here I am supporting a local business. Go figure. Anywho, so he talks about in Man in the Car, he's talking about how if you're thinking about like, should I buy this expensive thing, or should I buy this label, or should I buy this big house or this fast car, because people are going to like really respect and admire me. He's like kind of putting a wet blanket over it, your aspiration there, and saying, yeah, you should probably think about it, making that big purchase, because probably it's better for your wealth that you don't, and your intentions, right? That you don't. And then in the chapter 10, he talks about saving money, and I'm going to pull your attention to page, what was it? Page 105, I think. Yes. Okay. So in chapter 10, page 105, right? This is a quote that I basically pulled out and was like, oh, duh, right? It said, a high savings rate. So basically, the percentage of money that you're saving, when the money that's coming in, the percent that you're saving, that's your savings rate. So a high savings rate means having lower expenses than you otherwise could. And having lower expenses means your savings go further than they would if you spent more, right? So that's the like gist of it, right? And that's kind of really the focus of like the FIRE community, right? The what is it? Financial independence, retire early movement. That's what the FIRE acronym stands for. And those people, they're hardcore about it. They're like, I'm saving 50% of my income. I'm saving 80% of my income. And they're trying to get to retirement as fast as possible. So early retirement is due to the fact that their savings rate is high and their investing is good, right? And consistent. So that's what the FIRE community is about. And I felt like he was getting at that when he was talking about the high savings rate in chapter 10. Then on page 106, he says, past a certain level of income, what you need is just what sits below your ego. And then he goes on to say, think of it like this. And one of the most powerful ways to increase your savings rate, or your savings, isn't to raise your income, it's to raise your humility. Bars, right? Because what he's getting at is like, we buy things because we want people to think certain things about us, right? A lot of times we can just put that product back or put that purchase on hold as we're building wealth, because ultimately it's about how much you're saving and conserving of the money that's coming in, and not necessarily how much you are spending on lavish expenses, right? Yes, Kama says that line was one of my favorites. Same, right? So good, so good. So now I'm going to go backwards to chapter 9. And if you thought those were bars, hello, chapter 9, which was wealth is what you don't see. And it said spending money to show people how much money you have is the fastest way to have less money. I mean, duh, right? But at the end of the day, right, we're saving more, we're spending less, right? But he's saying on page 97, he said, we tend to judge wealth by what we see because that's the information we have in front of us. We can't see people's bank accounts or brokerage statements. So we rely on outward appearances to gauge financial success, cars, homes, Instagram photos, right? We think to ourselves like, oh my God, that person owns an island, they must be so wealthy, when really what they're showing off is their riches. Okay. And there's a difference. There's a difference between riches and wealth. What he's saying is that wealth is all those things that are playing in the background, right? It's that brokerage account that has millions in it. It's that savings account that is preparing him or her for a rainy day, right? It's all those things that really show wealth, right? Wealth is the nice cars not purchased, the diamonds not bought, the watches not worn, the clothes forgone, and the first class upgrade declined. Wealth is financial assets that haven't yet been converted into the stuff you see. So the question that I have for y'all, right, is how does chapter 9 make you feel? Because here's the thing, right? Is this not the most frustrating part of building wealth, right? We don't get our egos stroked on the way to wealth, right? Because that's what it is, right? It's an ego stroke when we're like, yes, I can finally afford to buy that thing. you know? But what he's saying is you don't need that ego stroke. What you need is to keep saving and keep investing and do that slodge, that's not the word I'm looking for, but you know what I mean, right? Where you're basically not allowing yourself to celebrate the sacrifices that you're making. And I felt a way about that. I did. I'm not even going to lie. I did. Let me know if you guys felt the same. Comment says, I love the quote on page 99. His definition of wealth shook me up in a good way. Exactly. What was page 99? Oh my gosh. I'm looking. Oh yes. He said, "Is this the quote? Let me know if this is the quote because I actually highlighted a quote too on page 99 too. It said, "But wealth is hidden. It's income not spent. Wealth is an option not yet taken to buy something later. Its value lies in offering you options, flexibility, and growth to one day purchase more stuff than you could right now." Ah, so good. Shit, Common and I, we're having a moment live on air. Common said that's the one. Wall Street Bet says, once you start hitting certain wealth milestones, in my opinion, you start not to want the same things everyone else have that probably can't afford them. Yeah, I found that to be true too. I found that like there were certain things that I was just like, now that I've reached the point that I could afford that, I don't really actually want it. There were some things that I was like, I remember I bought a pair of red bottoms. Yes, I did. I bought a pair of red bottoms. I bought them on consignment, but that's neither here nor there. Anyways, I bought these red shoes or these red bottoms, and they sat in my closet. They were uncomfortable. And I was like, look at me trying to impress people. And I don't even like these dang on shoes. So it was at that point that I literally sat down and wrote a list of all the things that I'm like, these purchases, past and possibly future purchases, are not giving me the return on investment that I'm desiring, And I encourage you to make that list yourself, right? Go back to past purchases, big and small, and tell yourself, was this really worth it? Did it really give me the feeling that I wanted, the triumphant feeling of like, yes, I have it? Or did it just say like, this was kind of anticlimactic, So yeah, that is definitely a good reflection exercise, as Common wrote in the chat for sure. Buyer's remorse. Yes, that's exactly what it is. It's buyer's remorse. Yeah, so good, so good. In chapter 11, I'm going to skip to chapter 11, which was reasonable is greater than rational. Okay. And so it said, what was page? It was page. It was on page 119, but I'm going to get to that in just a second because I want to call out Wall Street Bets for saying I was going to buy a Porsche until I realized the cost of ownership wasn't worth it. Yeah, I mean, I have the same thought about my current dream car because it changes, but my current dream car is a Mercedes-Benz SUV, a white one. Don't ask me the model, but that's what I wanted. And then I looked into the maintenance costs and I was like, ooh, I'll stick with my 2014 Toyota Prius with no hubcaps. Hello. Okay. So in chapter 11, page 118, we're talking about reasonable versus rational, right? Oh, actually, I didn't highlight something. What I did was I wrote a note to myself so that I could remember the difference between reasonable and rational. So here we go with the note, right? The note said the rational will have you think reactively, right? So that's things like when the market is down and the stock that you were really excited to own is down in price, right? And you're thinking to yourself, oh God, I'm losing money. I really need to sell. That's a rational thing to do, right? If you're looking to not lose, what do? You take an action, right? You make it so that you're not losing as much or you're not losing any more, right? That's the rational thing to do. But then the reasonable thing to do is to say, I support this stock and this company, and the me that chose this stock is confident that this was a sound investment, and we're going to continue on despite it being low. That's what I felt like reasonable versus rational. The other thing is that we do a lot of things that are reasonable for us, but they're not necessarily rational from like the outside looking in, you know? So that chapter, I encourage you, if you haven't already read it, go back to it and review it. It has a lot of good examples, more so than just like declarative like call outs or whatever. But it was really good for just understanding the psychology of like, you know what, sometimes we do things that we can't really kind of make sense of, but at the end of the day, it makes sense to us, and that's okay. Like he gave us permission to be like, that's okay. You do you, you know. Then I'm going to skip from chapter 12 and go straight to chapter 13, which talks about it's titled Room for Error. The most important part of every plan is planning on your plan, not going according to plan. Bars, yet again. In chapter 13, he basically gives the argument for being ready for the opportunity and the chaos that is associated with investing, right? Um, I wonder, I'm hoping, right, that the content that I create is all about preparation. That's my jam, right? I want you guys to be prepared with the knowledge, with the self-education, with the motivation that you need to go out there and make an investment, or multiple investments, and whether it's investment in yourself, investment in the stock market, investment in the different assets that we've talked about on Secured Bag Book Club, all those different investments. I am encouraging you to be prepared for your moment when you get that bonus, or you get that raise, or you get that tax refund, or you get that inheritance, or you get whatever. When that money comes, you're prepared to make it grow. You're prepared to make your wealth grow, and you're prepared to do it so that in a way that makes you feel comfortable and makes you feel empowered. So I'm hoping that that's what we're getting at. That's what we're getting towards with the content that I'm creating. So let me know in the comments if that's how you feel based off of just this book alone, because I definitely feel that way. Yep. Comment says, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Hello. Okay. That's right. That's what we're doing. We're staying ready. And then on page 140, hold on, I'm going to read the quote for the room for error, right? Room for error lets you endure a range of potential outcomes, and endurance lets you stick around long enough to let the odds of benefiting from a low probability outcome fall in your favor. What? Favor ain't fair, y'all, but it is on our side when we're prepared with a healthy margin of error, margin of safety is what it's called, but room for error. Then he goes on to say, so the person with enough room for error in part of their strategy, i.e. cash, right, savings, to let them endure hardship in another, stocks, for example, has an edge over the person who gets wiped out when they're wrong. So yes, that's, I think, a good note to end on. Now I have one quick announcement / question. Okay. I've got 2 books that I'm thinking about doing for next month's book club. Okay. First, we have We Should All Be Millionaires by Rachel Rogers. And then we have 10x is easier than 2x. Let me explain the two. So We Should All Be Millionaires is a book about how, well, specifically she targets it towards women, but anybody, right, can make decisions that will help them reach millionaire status. Kama, you have 10x is easier than 2x. I've read this book 3 times. Okay. I think I know which one we might be doing. So 10x is easier than 2x. I'm putting it in the frame here. 10x is easier than 2x is by Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy. And the book is basically about how certain choices will exponentially increase your odds of success than just going through the motions, doing the 2x linear thing. Oh my gosh, it's so good. So anyways, both of them are really good. Both of them I've read multiple times, but I'm wondering which one you guys would be interested in. So let me know in the comments later, think it over, think which one you need in this moment, and get back to me in the comments, okay? And then whichever one gets the most votes is the one we are going to to do. I know, okay, you have to have one. You got to pick one. You can't say both. You guys, oh, I love it. Okay, well, I guess you can say both, and then we'll see if anybody has a strong opinion on one versus the other. Okay. So thank you so much for joining this week's broadcast. I'm really excited that you guys were able to join me live. And for those that didn't, please leave a comment in the comment section about what you're seeing from this section of the book. Next, we will talk about from chapter 15 to the end. Remember, the schedule is on assetunderdog.com/events. And yes, really ready for the end of this book, really ready to get into the last few chapters. So yeah, let's do this. Let's do this thing. All right. Kama says she'll vote for We Should All Be Millionaires, even though she said she's open to either. Okay, so we've got one vote for We Should All Be Millionaires. Okay. Wall Street Bet says, I have some catching up to do on this book this weekend. Yes, you do. But listen, remember, go to the Spotify playlist because we have the audiobook there so you can read through it faster, read through it on your commute, get the audiobook if you want to, kind of breeze through all the chapters. It's really a good book that just kind of like has a lot of stories. So you can really listen to it in the background and still get a lot out of it. You don't have to like sit face down highlighting because, they done rattled through a bunch of numbers or whatever. I mean, past books, I'm not going to say names, but that has been my experience with other books. So there you go. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for tuning in. And remember, tell the others, okay? I'll see you guys next week. Bye.